Why is that not playing?
Well,
Well,
we've
it's
gone
recording.
dark.
Well, we're just going to do that as the intro. Uh,
Hmm.
welcome back, everybody. I had a joke lined up. I was going to say, Paul, if you had $1,980, what would you do with it?
Buy two iPhones.
You could tape them together, too.
This new phone has a major problem. I can't wait for Forbes to write that headline they always write, but
Hmm.
apply it to this device, which you can see on the screen behind you, which is that the outside screen is not the entire outside of the device. It's just like a little
Yeah.
postage stamp thing in the middle of it. That looks terrible.
Now, this thing was working. I have more images. Click on you, and it seriously, like, freezes every time.
It's weird because, Miracast usually is reliable.
Son of a, this episode is off to a great start. The intro didn't work. That
Yeah.
I even closed the window. I don't know what it's streaming. I closed the window that contained the photos of that thing behind me, and it's no longer working. But anyways,
Yeah.
folks, it's called the Galaxy Fold. It'll be coming in April, later half of April. It'll be $1,980
To start, by the way.
to start, and you can customize it in some fancy colors. 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, bunch of cameras on this thing. But the basic idea here is that it folds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Fundamentally, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the notion, this is going to get there. It's one of those things.
yeah.
It's a little thick. The outside screen is tiny. Over time, you can kind of imagine it evolving. But that fundamental part of it where you unfold it and you get this kind of 7-inch-ish, whatever it is, tablet type screen. The idea that you're looking at something on the outside screen, you want to see it on a bigger display. Maybe you want to watch a movie or whatever it is. I do like the idea. I think there's a future for this. I think it's going to make sense. This bulky, crazy looking thing,
Yeah.
it's Gen 1.
Yeah, it feels a lot like Samsung came out and wanted to scream first because this
Oh,
thing,
this is fundamental for them. Fundamental.
yeah, it's an interesting device. I will give it that.
Yeah.
I struggle with it, seeing that it overtake just a traditional 6.1-inch display candy bar or whatever.
It won't. It definitely won't. In fact, candy bar is an interesting term because that used to refer to these phones that were kind of thicker than we're typically, and it
like
is the
that,
shape,
yeah.
right? Yeah. I wrote an article yesterday about Samsung and their vision and their position of leadership right now, which I feel is very temporary. And it kind of went off. It went off in a different direction than I intended. I intended to write about something about Samsung and vision, and that the event yesterday was really about that vision, not about the actual products, because these things are all just evolutionary steps towards some future. But as I wrote it, I kind of realized, like, this company's screwed. They compete with Apple at the high end with pricing, and they've done nothing to lower prices. In fact, they raised prices, which is crazy. They just don't really have the cachet of Apple. I mean, they certainly innovate more and they innovate faster, for sure. Like you said, being first is job one for those guys. But they've got this Chinese thing coming, right? Like Huawei. And a lot of the stuff that they announced, it's funny because Mark Gurman and one of those guys said something on Twitter like, yep, here's a bunch of features from Samsung that will appear on the iPhones in the next 1 to 3 years, I look at a completely opposite direction. We've stopped looking to Apple for first to market. That hasn't happened since 2007. Here's a bunch of features from Samsung, all of which are available today in Huawei. Let me just list a few off the top of my head. In-screen fingerprint reader, right? Not that Huawei was first, but Chinese companies have had these things first. Huawei has two-way wireless charging, by the way. The device I'm using right now has this. And so if you have you could put a phone on top of it and charge it off of the screen. Like, you can do that right now. And so I realize that's not the foldable stuff we're talking, but with regards to yesterday's announcements in total, this is a big problem for Samsung. We know that Vivo and several other Chinese companies, Huawei actually is one of them, are going to announce foldable devices as well. And Samsung's sole advantage over Apple and the rest of the industry was this thing of being first, and they are not first.
Yeah.
And now they're not even better, and now they're not even the least expensive. They have a huge problem, like a huge problem. And so I realized yesterday was a little bit of a victory lap or something, but this may be like the last stand of this company. Like this year may end with them in second place in the smartphone market. If not, next year, absolutely. Within a couple of years, they might be third or fourth. I don't know how they fight that back. Huawei and these other companies are doing to Samsung what Samsung did to Apple. There's a certain amount of poetry to that in a way,
Where you were talking, I was able to fix this here, and so now you can see the more traditional Android style layout. There's that image, the unfold.
Yeah, it looks beautiful unfolded.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad device. It's just
it's too early.
It's not a mainstream device. It's a very
it's priced
niche
that way, right?
market. It's expensive, but that's what you see with Gen 1 tech. Again, it's the evolution of stuff. I think
it's what you see from Gen 1 tech from them.
Yeah, that is true.
Think of it this way. Let's pretend Apple has developed a folding screen phone internally and it looks like that, right? They would never release that product. Never, 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 right? They would wait 3 or 4 years until they could get it as thin and as amazing as possible. Then they would release it. And, sometimes that's a complaint against Apple in a way. But you know that whenever they do come out with a folding whatever, it's going to be amazing. Samsung is willing to vomit this thing out as soon as they come up with it. And I get it, but I don't think that's going to serve them well anymore. I think that's a mistake. That's all.
It'll be interesting to see. The smartphone market is it's saturated. It's established. I don't know. It's a mature market at this point, and people are going to start throwing out these ideas to see what sticks. But as we know, in the PC space, there's going to be a race to the bottom of pricing, and we're already starting to see that. That's coming from the Chinese companies. And
it's worse than that, though, isn't it? Right? I mean, one of the fundamental problems for the Mac back in the day was that at one point PCs got better than Macs, right? So not only were they less expensive, they were actually just better, And Apple has done a lot to counteract that in intervening years, for sure. But that's something that did happen. It's something that's happening now to Samsung. But Samsung is only semi-unique in that they are a little bit like Apple. They can create an ecosystem, right? So they have a lot of their own apps that sit on top of Android. Other companies do that too, but Huawei does that. They have a surrounding ecosystem of hardware devices, including their whatever they're calling their AirPods, probably GearPods, something.
I think they call them Galaxy Buds.
Complete ripoff. Even like the UI that appears on the screen is a complete ripoff of what Apple did. They have the smart speaker coming, just like Apple has a smart speaker. Whatever they can do that. But you know what? Huawei can do that, and some of these other companies, Xiaomi or whatever. I'm sure they can do it as well. But they're just not unique anymore. I don't. The only thing they kind of have, and this is like, the advantage we talk about with Amazon, where they have like different things they can kind of combine in unique ways that other companies can't, is Samsung has a lot of other markets that they compete in. And some of them are for some kind of strange things, right? Like washing machines and refrigerators and things like that,
they build
right?
ships. I'm not even kidding.
I'm sure they do, Sony, through the dark days that Sony had a decade ago, the thing that kept that company afloat was their life insurance company. Big companies have weird assets, Now, because they're into consumer electronics, obviously you can get like a smart things going on or whatever they're calling that now between your phone and your refrigerator, your Samsung TV. They make great, smart TVs, and so that's a little bit of a something. I mean, it's something that Huawei doesn't have here, at least. It's something that Apple doesn't quite have. I mean, they're building out their own ecosystem, of course, but the reason this stuff is popular is because it works with everything, right? And so you could buy a Samsung Smart TV and use iTunes on it. You could buy a Samsung smartphone and use it with Google Assistant and use it to play, Google Play Music through your Google Max speaker or whatever. I mean, the point of all this stuff is it does work together. It's weird. Like I said, I went into this thinking this is Samsung. They're showing leadership. And then by the time I got through it, I was like, they're screwed,
Yeah, I mean, they're in the same Apple position, right? They're just going to try to ride this wave out. I did look it up. Samsung makes boats. They make forklifts. It's called Samsung Heavy Industries. They make wind turbines. They make anything. If it can be built, they are probably doing it.
Yeah, I don't mean this like Samsung's not going out of business, but in the same way that Nintendo used to be a maker of wooden toys back in the 1940s or something. No, I mean, they literally were, right?
Yeah.
Board games and stuff like that. They evolved into something else. Now it happens to be gaming related, so it's like, you can make an argument it's a logical extension or something. And I would say, by the way, Nintendo, the Famicom, the first one, was a ripoff of ColecoVision, and there's a rich history of that in Asia, folks. But whatever. The fascinating thing to me about this is a lot of people, especially Apple fans, will look at the trial they had between Samsung and Apple, the outright copying that Samsung was accused of and was absolutely guilty of, and how they kind of usurped the market position from Apple by copying them and then improving on them. It's going to happen to them. It's happening right now to them. Like I said, I already have a phone that has everything that they just promised in the S10. It's like already there. It doesn't have it doesn't have the next gen processor or whatever, but that's what happens. And it's the next couple of years is going to be interesting. They're talking about like the new Galaxy decade or what a second Galaxy decade. It's not going to be as fruitful as the first, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see they're definitely not going to see the growth. That's for sure. Their
or the market
ultrasonic
domination
fingerprint reader did seem kind of interesting because it doesn't require the backlight to be on, which means you can log into your phone without screen turning on, which is nice. But again,
but let me ask you something.
The price of that, though.
When they added that, what they got rid of was the fingerprint reader on the back, right? Which is what happens. Okay, fine. You use an iPhone XS. I have been literally until yesterday was using an iPhone XR, and I have to say, after my initial criticisms of this thing, which for some reason I found untenable, this Face ID thing where it kind of unlocks in front of you and you swipe up is actually a very natural and easy interaction. Yeah. And so far on Android, any of the Face ID-like things that have appeared have been really insecure. They could be fooled by photographs. They're stupid. So I don't know. I don't remember. Samsung didn't really talk about the camera stuff, although I think it's only the 10 Plus had some sort of an infrared something camera on the front, so maybe that's what that was for. But I think they had kind of a weak secondary camera-based login system before, like most Android makers. It's interesting to me that they would be pushing a in-screen fingerprint reader at a time when everyone's, the future's obviously it's facial recognition, right? It's not your fingerprint. That's ludicrous.
Yeah, well, I would welcome back a fingerprint reader on the iPhone if Apple would ever embrace this. Yeah, I am.
Because I've always said that. I know there's a lot of people that feel that way. I did, and actually, it was the iPhone XR that changed my mind. I use an iPad every day to read, and in the morning, when I do read, I push your thumb on the thing and it doesn't register, and you push it on again, it doesn't register, then you move it a little bit, and it kind of does, and then I pick up the iPhone, and it's like, yep, unlocked.
It works. The Face ID.
Apple was onto something.
Maybe, the login works perfect. It's fine for about 98% of the time. There's just like paying with things with your phone. It's still just a little awkward. If you're not,
do you have to do that? I noticed when you buy a movie on the phone, you do the double click on the power button. What the hell is that?
So what you have to do is you have to authenticate, I think, and then you tap it on. No, wait, you tap it on the terminal, and I think you hit it twice, and then it scans your face.
I assume that's a physical button press because it's like, are you sure?
Yeah, you're about to spend money.
Yeah, like you're literally going to spend money. So just want to make sure. I guess I give them a little credit for that. I'd like to turn that off.
Yeah.
I guess somebody could point your phone at you and trigger a purchase or something.
Yeah,
maybe
that's where the fingerprint reader would be very nice. And there's certain times when laying in a bed and it doesn't see your face and whatever.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we could both agree then that having both would be great.
Both would be the ideal solution. I would be all in favor of that.
From experience on various, I guess we'll call them Nexus and Pixel type phones where it's on the back, and I know the previous Galaxy phones as well, which although those weren't as nicely placed, I really preferred the back mounted fingerprint reader personally as well. And I think that would work well in tandem with a Face ID type system.
Yeah. But, speaking of Apple Pay, by the way, they're apparently working with Goldman Sachs and MasterCard to launch a new credit card here. I kind of just blew this off because it's like, well, whatever. But
it's hard not to be cynical about an Apple credit card. That phrase right there sounds, ludicrous, right? This is a really good idea. And what's interesting is, as I read, I started writing. I wrote down a few things before I read the article, and because this is from a report in the Wall Street Journal, the things I wrote down are what's happening, right? So the two things I came up with that I thought would be smart were Apple should treat this like the health and fitness tracking stuff they have.
I agree.
Except for finances. It's really smart, especially for young people who need to be on a budget and understand where their money's going and all that stuff, and then confronted by that might make changes. It kind of works like the digital well-being stuff as well, right?
Yeah.
This is a very logical place for Apple to go, and a thing that's really beneficial. But the other kind of and again, this literally is apparently the case. The other thing I thought of was that Apple takes some small percentage. It might vary by transaction, so you can't say 1 or 2%. It's some small percentage every time someone makes a transaction with Apple Pay in a store. When Apple owns the credit card, they take a higher percentage, right? Because it's their card. Because another percentage goes to the card maker. But the thing I came up with, and this is the thing that the report says is the case, Apple is going to give some like 2% cash back on purchases generally. And when I read that, I said to myself, they should make it a higher percentage when you use it to buy Apple products. And that's exactly what they do. And that's genius, right?
I mean, that's just like
genius.
The Delta credit card that I have when I use it to buy Delta flights.
Yes.
I get more
Always
miles.
do that. Yeah, we stayed in a Hilton over whatever weekend we were just away. We used the Hilton credit card because you get whatever 6x points or 3 or whatever the number is.
Yep.
So I honestly, there is a cynical aspect to this, right? So Apple is trying to grow its services business. It has a publicly stated goal of hitting $50 billion annual by 2020. We know that this number hit $10 billion in the most recent quarter, so that it sounds doable. We've talked this week about their coming TV movie service, and I don't think this makes a ton of sense compared to some of the other things they might do. But I have to say, this thing, this is something. How hard is it to find something that would generally benefit most of, or some huge percentage of Apple's customer base, right? This is a really good example of something that does.
Yeah.
It actually makes more sense than a video service as far as being able to hit so many people. I don't know what to say. I think this is a great idea. It's a great idea.
I also think this probably means that in iOS 13, we're probably going to see a redesign of that wallet app, I would bet.
That's right. Yeah, right. So by the way, I should have said that. Yeah, there's a bunch of changes coming to the iPhone software for this. They are happening in the wallet app, and specifically around things like budgeting, where your spending's at, getting notifications if you go over some limit by some time. And again, Apple, they're a company you can trust with this kind of stuff. I mean, there's stuff about Apple I don't like, but as far as being trustworthy with regards to personal information, I think they're as up there as you can be. And I like the digital well-being stuff. I don't use their health and fitness tracking, but I do use a Fitbit, so I understand that, and I like that. I think they're certainly leading a charge with unique capabilities around ECG and so forth. Extending that, it's so smart. This company has been like, we're about your privacy. We're about your privacy. We're about your privacy. Now we're going to help you manage your money. Is there anything, maybe health, right, that is as controversial for a human being to discuss with someone else than their finances, right? Health, religion, politics, and money, right? I mean, health, religion, politics, and money. Yeah, and health. I don't remember if I said that, but those things they're touchy topics. You have to be able to trust the person or the entity you're dealing with. I mean, I love Huawei, but do I like how do I feel about giving them my credit card data?
Yeah.
Makes
you wonder when they got enough money when the Apple Bank is coming. I mean, that would be.
Yeah.
I mean, they got enough money.
Well, they do need a place to store all that money.
Yeah.
Offshore. It will be based in the Caymans. Anyway, I very rarely. I mean, think about Apple and all. The iPod or HomePod. You're like whatever. These expensive new phones. You're like, yeah, whatever. I mean. This thing is like, yes, this is a good idea. It's kind of like the iPhone upgrade program, although, of course, that's predicated on people wanting a new phone every year. But what you get is a steady stream of income because they're paying a set amount per month and they keep moving forward with it. This is even better. I really think this is going to reach a mass audience. I think this is just a really smart idea.
It'll be interesting, and we got some time to watch this unfold because apparently it's not coming until this fall. Is that?
Yeah, but they'll probably announce it at WWDC,
You
right?
think?
Yeah, because it's going to be part of iOS 13 or whatever it is. I think it would be smart for them to do that. What they're going to want is financial institutions to buy into this,
Right.
so that they too can be part of the wallet app or whatever. I mean, I know they are today, but the new capabilities of the wallet app. I guess they could do that discussion in private with the biggest banks, but the problem is, and I know this because when we moved, we searched around, we tried a local bank first because that's what we always did, and we eventually went with this kind of new breed of online only bank, which is kind of a weird situation because someone hands you $200 in cash and you can't deposit it. But the point being that there are in this country alone probably thousands and thousands of financial institutions of all stripes.
Yeah.
You can't just go to the big five and say, hey, we got Citi and whoever else. It's like, yeah, but I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but individuals across the United States alone probably have their money in an astonishing array of institutions. And so it would behoove them to go public with it at that time, I think.
I kind of hope they do. I would love it to have. See, the one thing that's missing from all this, which maybe it's coming, which is kind of what Mint does, is that if you go to a place that doesn't support Apple Pay to get that transaction into the app. Now, that can very easily be done. Whether or not Apple takes that step is a big
Samsung
question.
did it, actually, right? That's one thing. The nice thing about Samsung Pay, which I don't use, but the one nice thing about it apparently is you can use it anywhere that takes a Stripe type of thing, which is kind of interesting. Or I don't know how it works exactly, but apparently it works virtually anywhere.
See, now that to me would be interesting and potentially could get me to sign up for this. Is that because the one thing that annoys me is we go to Kroger's is where we buy all our groceries. Guess who doesn't support Apple Pay? And they're rolling out their own payment system, Paul. This is fantastic.
Good.
I was screaming at them.
Interesting. Well, that's dumb, by the way. But
it is. Walmart did really well with their stupid one that they rolled out.
Yeah. Yep. So supporting standards is smart. You should go where your customers are. You can still do your own loyalty program, like Kroger's, I'm sure, has one, and you can do that through the wallet app and on an iPhone. It's fine. I don't think people understand this, and I'm not pretending to be an expert, but basically today the most secure way to make a payment when you're out in the world is through a phone. Those payment systems are more secure than using a credit card. The other thing is they generate fake numbers, essentially, which is a feature you do get with certain credit cards, but you can't do that out in the world, right? So if I go to a restaurant with my Amex card, they get my Amex number. There's no way I can transmit a fake number to it. Although that should change, by the way, but as of today, that's the way that is. When you pay with Amex online, you have the opportunity to generate a fake number for that one transaction, and that way the entity you're dealing with online doesn't have your real number. It's a one-use code only, a one-use number. These payment systems, I'm simplifying it, but they basically do the same thing. They don't get your number, and all they do is get the authorization. It goes through. They can't do it again. It's a one-time deal. It's the safest way to go. So, and for Apple fans, if you're going to buy an iPhone or a Mac or whatever it is every so often, why not? You go, we use like a, what do you call it, a Costco card for a lot of our general purposes, purchases rather, because we shop at Costco a lot, and they actually give you a check, and you're supposed to use it on Costco merchandise, but you can bring it to customer service and get cash. It's nice.
Yeah, interesting times ahead.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, I usually ask you what else you got going on.
I know, but you got to get going.
I got to go.
That's too bad because I have a list of 7 things I'd like to discuss. So, do
they involve photo scanning or hue lights?
No, I'm done with both.
Not interested in either, then.
All right, fine.
All right, folks, well, that wraps it up for today, and we'll catch you right back here next time on First Ring Daily. And that's not working, and I don't know why.